What is your name?
McCain.
How old are you?
31.
In which school were you educated, or any university?
The Naval Academy.
What is your rank in the Army?
Lieutenant Commander in the Navy.
And your official number?
624787.
What is it that defines a great leader? Is it his courage? Is it his courage to do the difficult and not just the easy things? Is it the courage to fight to survive? Faith certainly plays a role. Faith in God, faith in your fathers, faith in your friends and band of brothers. Is it that maverick spirit, a little rebellious streak? What readies a man to lead this nation? Is it his principles, the willingness to stand up and fight for his convictions? Is it his life experience? Most certainly, it's a matter of the heart to have humility, the heart to never surrender.
Rocket was fired across the flight deck from an F-4, and it hit, there was a F-4 Phantom, and it hit the fuel tank. It went through the fuel tank underneath my airplane. As you can see in the film, I went off the end of the refueling probe. The A-4 Skyhawk sits at an angle and rolled through the fire and went across to the other side of the flight deck and observed that one of my other friends had jumped out of his airplane, but he had rolled through the fire and was still on fire. His outfit was still on fire. I started back towards him, and as I did, the first bomb that was exploded because of the flames of the fuel fire, and it was a horrendous thing, and then other bombs went off.
That's an incredible sequence of film. I mean, he is a split second away from not being here.
And 134 brave young men gave their lives that day, and they fought, and they saved the ship, and they sacrificed their lives to save the ship.
2 days later, after going through sick bay and getting patched up for the shrapnel wounds and some burns, as I recall, John McCain is volunteering to go to another carrier to go fly missions over North Vietnam. That says everything about him. He is that committed, that dedicated, not to war, not to going into battle, but to doing his duty.
Went back on the Forrestal, which was headed back to the United States because the damage was so severe. And a guy came over from the Oriskany, another aircraft carrier, and said, we need more pilots. They'd lost a lot of pilots, and I volunteered to go over and serve on the Oriskany. And I was flying on the Oriskany when I was shot down and captured. Our target was the power generating plant in the city of Hanoi. Released my bombs, and as I pulled back on the stick, I was hit by a surface-to-air missile.
Phone rang, so I just picked it up. And it was a friend, an admiral in the Navy named Hank Miller, and he said, Roberta, there's been 2 airplanes shot down, but we didn't see any ejections. So I called Carol, my daughter-in-law, and I said, Carol, I think Johnny is dead. Do you? And she said, yes. And I said, okay, let's accept that.
I sank to the bottom of the lake, and both my arms were broken. And so I was able, with my teeth, to pull a toggle, which inflated my life vest, and they were very agitated. A very large crowd came. They bayoneted me in a couple of places. I sat up and saw my leg all bent, and with that, one of them smashed my shoulder with a rifle butt. North Vietnamese soldiers came, put me on a stretcher, put me in the back of a truck, and drove me to the prison, which we know of as the Hanoi Hilton.
A couple of these stewards came running out of the front door, and they said, oh, Mr. McCain, he's a prisoner of war. He's a prisoner of war. Can you believe that that's the best news I ever heard in my life? So it depends on where you're standing, what your reaction is to certain things.
He was in a huge body cast, right arm sticking out of this cast like a stick out of a snowman, His right knee was mangled. His left arm was dislocated and hanging out of the socket. He'd been bayoneted in the leg. He was bandaged up, and he was about 95, 97 pounds. His eyes were fever bright. I was certain he was going to die before morning. My sense was that the Vietnamese had dumped him off on me to make it appear that the Americans had neglected him to death. But John had no intention of dying.
Over a long period of time, I was able to sit up and then walk with crutches, and when I was able to walk with crutches, they immediately moved me into a cell by myself where I spent a couple of years in solitary confinement.
One of the techniques that they used from time to time was to take ropes and tie it around your biceps, pull your arms back, and then loop the rope around your head and pull your leg down between your legs. It's very uncomfortable, as you can well imagine. One night I was in an interrogation room being kept in that particular position where they had left me for the night. The door of my cell opened, it was the middle of the night, and a guard walked in who used to be what we called a gun guard. He was just a sentry that walked around the camp. He walked over to me, put his finger to his lips, and unloosened the ropes that were binding me. About 5 hours later, he came back in the cell, which was obviously the end of his watch, tightened up the ropes, and left, never obviously saying a word. About 2 months later was Christmas Day. Because it was Christmas Day, they allowed me to stand outside of my cell for about 10 minutes. We did that because they didn't want any of us to see each other. I went outside. I was standing there in this dirt courtyard, and who comes wandering over and walks over but the same guard. And he stood beside me, and he stood there for a minute, and with his sandal he drew a cross in the dirt and stood there for a minute looking at me, and didn't say a word. A few minutes later, he rubbed it out with his sandal and walked away. My friends, I will never forget that man. I will never forget that moment, and I will never forget the fact that no matter where you are, no matter how difficult things are, there's always going to be someone of your faith and your belief and your devotion to your fellow man who will pick you up and help you out and bring you through.
I think what sustains you is faith in God, faith in country, and faith in your fellow prisoners. Faith in God is pretty obvious. Faith in country, you have to always believe that your country is doing everything it can to get you back home. Faith in one's fellow prisoner is probably as important an element. A lot of people talk about my experience as being terrible in prison. I was privileged to observe 1,000 acts of courage and compassion and love, and those that I know best and love most are those that I was in prison with.
He's proven it in spades, his character and his courage and integrity when he was in prison and about to die, and they gave him a chance to come home, and he knew the damage that would be done should he accept something like that. His character came through in spades and says, no way.
I can look back now, and I can see that Johnny was a leader from the very beginning. I was known as Johnny's mother. They would go outside, if they want to be, they'd call for Johnny's mother, and I'd come on out. Johnny was a leader.
You have to be able to inspire a Congress and a nation, and I think he's a man that can do that.
This was Mom at the Wolfboro Town Hall, and she said, we wear this bracelet, it's her son's name, and by the way, it has his picture.
Oh, wow.
See his picture?
And he's passed away?
He was killed December 6th in Baghdad.
Oh.
And she said, I want you to do what you can to make sure that he didn't die in vain.
Our sons are serving and will serve, and I just think we need a commander-in-chief that understands that. And I just couldn't really see my sons serving under someone else that didn't get it.
I think that the transcendent issue of the 21st century is the struggle against radical Islamic extremism. And I, with considerable ego, say that I'm the best prepared and qualified to meet this challenge, and I think it's a threat to everything we stand for and believe in.
There's this great adage that says, the best sermons are not preached, they're lived. And if you look at the life of Senator McCain, you see a life of courage, of dedication, of duty, of honor, of character, of strength, of patriotism, in a measure and in a magnitude that is epic.
He is prepared through his intellect, his life experience, his character, his courage, his integrity to deal with the tough issues. That's why you make a great president.
I almost feel sorry for his opponents because he stands so head and shoulders above these other people, and you don't have to guess about it. You already know exactly where he stands and what he's done, and the country and the luckiest people in the world if they get John Sidney McCain for president.
How do you choose one woman, one man, one person? America at risk all over the world. And who could I pick to be commander-in-chief? How do you pick a president? Look at a pine tree, get a knife, cut out everything that doesn't look like a president. And I'll tell you what you'll see when you look at these candidates. Good people all. You'll see John McCain.
To have the honor of serving after finishing 5th from the bottom of my class at the Naval Academy has been wondrous. I'm the luckiest guy that I've ever known. I've never known anyone that's as fortunate as I am, and I'm grateful for it.